how does HDR support professional growth and continuous learning and upskilling?
As we're doing our daily tasks, we come back to our technology office and we say, hey, it would be really great if we had a tool that does this, right? Whatever it is. And our excellent team of AI programmers and technology experts, they look at that and say, challenge accepted.
Welcome to Hands-On Heroes podcast. I'm Val Crafton, the voice of grit. I champion the people who power progress and prove that the future is built by those willing to get their hands dirty. Let's dive in. This episode is powered by HDR, an employee-owned design firm built on collaboration and opportunity. At HDR, people are encouraged to take charge of their careers and create real impact through design and innovation. They're shaping communities today and inspiring the builders of tomorrow. Learn more at hdrinc.com. That's hdrinc.com. Welcome to the new series of this podcast, Hands-On Heroes. I'm Valerie Crafton, your host, and I'm here with a special guest, Rob Stye. Now, Rob and I go back a really long time. We used to work together when we were both still at a general contractor, an EPC firm. And so excited to have you on because, unlike, the world of construction where I come from, you come from the design side. And frankly, we can't build it unless we can design it. And so I'm always talking to children when I'm reading books to them on how, designers really kind of create the impossible. And I do some little fun things with them, but let's talk about you, Rob. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Valerie, thanks for having me on. Really an honor. I think I'm the first guest in the new podcast.
Yes.
Awesome. So we set the bar. So
that's right.
Here we are. Thanks. So, as you mentioned, you and I go back quite a long ways, to some previous employers. But boy, my wife and I were talking the other night. It was our anniversary yesterday, and we're out at dinner and just talking about things. And I have been in the industry for almost 30 years, which has just flown by. And I grew up in Chicago. There's a long history of engineering in my family, and we'll get into that a little bit, but went to University of Illinois in Chicago, studied mechanical engineering, actually went there on a springboard diving scholarship. So I had 1 meter and 3 meter springboard diving. So
nice.
So I define that balance between doing athletics and academics. And shout out to Coach Larry, right? He did a great job of keeping myself and a few other my teammates, walking that line and balance and making sure we're successful. And, I still keep in touch with a lot of those guys, teammates to this day. So it's a lot of fun. Started working for a mid-size MEP firm in Chicago, right out of school. And I was lucky enough to get on the program for the Field Museum of Natural History. So we were the building engineer representative at the time. So I did a lot of work on the central hydronics plant, the chiller plant, the steam plant, air handling units, centralized systems. And that's really how I got my entryway into critical environments. Because you can imagine some of these exhibits are extremely specialized, temperature, humidity control. So about 5 years after school, I got tired of the Chicago weather. Everything I owned fit in the back of my Pontiac. And I said, I'm going to try Phoenix, Arizona for about 3 years. It's building, it's growing. I had some recruiters reach out to me and I landed here, and that was 25 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I've had the privilege of working for a lot of really good firms here in the Valley. And that eventually grew from doing commercial buildings to labs, semiconductor, and then really the journey into mission critical.
Yeah.
And there was a couple opportunities, and I just dove into it. It started because the firm I was working for was doing a central plant upgrade. And, I walked around with the facility manager and I said, this is really cool. Tell me everything I would need to know about designing a data center. So I got to work with him, and it just kind of grew from there. And now I'm at HDR, been here about 7 years. I wear a couple different hats, one of which is obviously I'm a leader in our mission critical group, but I also lead our semiconductor practice. And really, as of late, with the advent of AI, there's a lot of crossover between skill sets and requirements and everything that goes with designing for AI and then the application of AI.
Well, not to mention, and I mean, it is, I don't know if it's just the elephant in the room, but once you've worked on semiconductor and multi-billion dollar projects, everyone's calling, the today's mission critical data center a first of a kind, right? And for most who's been in data center this entire time, it really is. And we're doing a lot of things we've never done before, getting very creative with power, bridging power, cooling, and so forth. But when you think about scale, and what it means to scale a project or even scale a team, whether it's design or being in the field in construction, when you've worked on a semiconductor, you can really kind of picture how that actually fits together. So it's actually really beneficial. Both of us have been on both sides of that dime. And in fact, I built my first data center in Chicago.
You did. That's
I also
awesome.
went to college in Illinois. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good old Midwest folks. We've got that Midwest workhorse and grind in us.
We do. And now in Phoenix, we can get some of the food from Chicago, and I can watch the Bears and the Cubs on TV. So why go back and deal with the snow?
100%. I like visiting it, leaving it there, and coming back to my son. I'm also a fan of, after I left, that project in Elk Grove, came out here to Phoenix, and this has really been home the majority of my career, actually. Yeah. So now for me, it's been like 21 years since I was in Chicago building that data center. So I want to talk about a little bit about HDR though. Let's get into that. I mean, you mentioned, you wear a few hats. What really makes HDR special and differentiates them?
His vision was to bring water and power to rural communities, right? So in 1908, we didn't have the infrastructure that we do today. It was being built out. So that was the catalyst for his firm. Then as it grew, in the 1930s, Mr. Richardson. So there's the H, the D, the R. So the R jumps on, and that was really the Rural Electrification Act of the 1930s. I'm trying to remember my history.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So that expanded, and you got to remember too, that was the Depression and everything that was going on there, a lot of economic challenges, and trying to bring services to people that didn't have it.
We're seeing that with internet, with the rural areas, that really kind of shed a light on it in COVID on the rural areas, and how we really need to work a little harder to get internet out to those folks.
Exactly. Even with the fact that I've been focused on buildings for the most part, it's become infrastructure, and I think that is one thing that we as engineers do very well. Is it's bringing the infrastructure to people, elevating the quality of life, the standard of living. That's one of our main goals. Going off a tangent here a little bit, but then the 1940s, the D with an HD in our Mr. Durham, he took over as president, and it just started to grow. We expanded offices outside of Omaha. I think it was the 1960s that we did our first international project, and now we're 225 offices operating in about 14 countries, give or take. I may have that off by one. 14,000 employees.
Wow.
Just massive. So the longevity is one of the key items that makes us a really unique and great firm. The other one is the fact that we're an employee-owned firm. So back in 1996, there were a number of folks that reacquired the practice from an international investor and offered the ownership to all of the employees.
Oh, wow.
And we do that through our 401k program. We can buy shares of stock and watch it grow, and it's a lot of fun to do that. But it really drives a culture of ownership. And John Henderson, our current CEO, when he stands up and presents, when he introduces himself, he says, "I have the privilege of serving 14,000 shareholders in his job," right? So that sets the tone of not only our leadership and who we are as a company and a culture. We're working for, my job is to work for 14,000 other shareholders.
Wow. That's amazing, and a beautiful thing, because it just kind of shows his servant leadership. And I
Does.
believe culture really starts at the top and flows down. So as the leaders below them, he's holding them to the same accountability that he holds himself, right? And I think that creates a very special environment. Now, having personally worked for an employee-owned company as well, there was something that stood out to me that I thought was really special was the level of ownership in what everybody did. It didn't matter if you were, the admin, the engineer, it didn't matter who you were in the company. Everybody just took such pride and ownership down to, you would hear a conversation at the printer, talking about, wasting paper because that impacted, they're thinking like an owner. They're thinking about waste. They're thinking about working smarter, not harder, doing more with less. How can we, and maintaining quality in every aspect at every layer. And I'm just curious, do you see that same thing inside HDR?
Oh, 100%. 100%. It permeates through our daily actions, through our delivery of our services and products. When we do it may sound a little bit cliche, but when I'm wearing a shirt and I have the HDR logo on it, or I'm representing the firm, it goes back to that statement. I'm representing 14,000 other people. So what I do is a reflection on that.
100%.
And vice versa. So it's the little things that count. And that creates a culture of quality, partnership, inclusion, collaboration, teaming. For being a firm of 14,000 people, which sounds massive, and then how would you know who everyone is? And you probably never will know everyone. You'd be shocked at how small a company we are when it comes to communication. And when you reach out to someone, say, "Hey, I have a problem."
Right.
The feedback we get from 20, 30 people of, "Oh, I have the same issue. Here's how I solved it. How can I help you?"
Wow. That is like continuous improvement in action.
Yeah, it is.
Just being able to share and care and really setting each other up for success. I think that's a really beautiful thing. So as it's growing in importance, I mean, I do believe that cross-functional collaboration is really key. And I can't imagine the ownership of even at the design level when you're working for clients and how that comes out. What does that look like?
Good point. Good point. It's the facilities we design in the data center world, when you talk about scale, right, they become just massive. And I think for a while, the industry used to look at it as silos, or I've got a colleague that calls it cylinders of excellence. That as a mechanical engineer, I used to worry about, hey, just the building, connect services 5 feet out, and then at 6 feet out from the building, that's the civil engineer's problem. Right. Yeah, there's going to be a substation on board. That's the electrical engineer's problem. We can no longer think that way.
No.
Right. So HDR is set up in a number of different vertical markets. Building engineering services is the one that I live in, and data centers and semiconductor is our tech, media, and telecom sector. Beyond that, we have an architecture business group, a power business group, water, resources. We have a federal group. And we find more often than not that we have to bring in the resources from those other market sectors and those business groups to design the projects that are just massive. Valerie, who thought a couple of years ago that we'd be designing campuses that are 1 gigawatt?
Well, I mean, 5 years ago, we thought 50 was big, and then 100, and then 200, and suddenly we just did this big leap it went from 2 to 5 to 1 gigawatt. And so I like to say 1,000 megawatts just because it's very big, and you should say it that way so you understand how massive it is.
The first project I won, the data hall was 1 megawatt, and I was doing cartwheels. Right, that was amazing. Now it's it's 1 megawatts, almost a rounding error. So bringing in the impact that those facilities have on the infrastructure, the climate, everything, it really justifies the idea that we need to bring in services that we typically didn't coordinate with. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Just we never thought about it. Substation design, on-site power, microgrids, sustainable aspects of water use, reuse, battery energy storage, how that fits into the picture, minimizing the overall impact. And it's a massive collaboration effort, but it's taken our industry and our practice to that next level. And the lessons we're learning in semiconductor translate to data center, that translate to hospital design or bridge design and roadway design. So as an industry, we constantly evolve, we constantly learn, and the key success in that is collaboration across different disciplines and trades, and then leveraging the contractor community. What can we learn
there? Yeah, the partnership now is more important than ever, I think.
Yes.
Just really getting both design and contractors in as early as possible to start those conversations, to where we could have brought them in a later phase or stage gate, depending on how you look at your build cycle. But it is a conversation, that partnership up front, bringing everyone into the conversation from the beginning, everybody getting on the same page, and watching that flow down the build cycle together in unison, rather than a handoff where there's no singular constant across the board. So we're seeing that all to come together. And frankly, you can't have a data center without a microchip. So you're seeing all these folks come together. You even see it at the conferences, right? Like we see capital there, we see power there, we see the contractors there, mission critical, semiconductor, we're hearing about, NVIDIA building these AI factories, and it's just bringing everybody into the ecosystem. And then that starts to trickle down into software technology folks. I mean, it's all one big conversation. So it's interesting that you bring up that beyond just internally, how you have to function differently from a design perspective, but you started talking almost automatically and naturally that I'm bringing into my circle contractors. We're having to have, let's talk like commissioning, for example. That would have been an afterthought, right?
Yes.
Now we're bringing them all the way to the front because we have to.
Yeah, and funny you bring that up, we actually do have a commissioning group. So we leverage them, even if we don't have the contract to do commissioning. I leverage their expertise all the time for QA, QC reviews, constructability reviews. It's a very powerful force. And a lot of the bigger firms are now starting to expand out into services that we traditionally didn't get into, but we definitely see a need for it. And it's become a massive value add for our clients.
This episode is powered by Mod42, the modular data center company redefining speed to market. From design to delivery, Mod42 brings precision manufacturing, quality assurance, and trusted execution to every build. When reliability can't wait, Mod42 delivers. Learn more at mod42.com. And so I think this is a really great segue, because we can't really talk about partnership without talking about workforce, or maybe we should talk about the evolution of workforce or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how is HDR identifying and growing your talent in this really fast evolving industry right now?
I'll start out with, for the amount of work that's out there, there just in general is not enough talent. That's both on design side, design side and the build side. Layer on the fact that a lot of the same firms and construction companies that do data centers are also doing advanced manufacturing. So battery plants, semiconductor. So now you've got a strained resource pool. Capital investment is driving a speed to market that we've never seen before. Layer on top of that, we all became supply chain experts during COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll start with design can be considered as one of those early links in the supply chain.
Yep.
So we've modified our approach to think not only about just, hey, how do we get a permit set of drawings done or a construction document set done? How do we set our build partners up for success when it comes to procuring equipment, building in phases? That takes resources. So traditionally, firms have gone out to the university market here join us, and we're a great firm. You want to work for us versus the guy down the street, and that's good. And there's a mentorship program that's had to accelerate. So one of the great things that we do is we have a very, very expansive intern program. So we're trying to get ahead of the game, talking to universities, recognizing top talent within that, bring them on. And the intern pool in our university system is fantastic. These are young professionals that can come in after a year or two of school, and they're really making an impact. And they're using technology that we historically didn't. So we're learning as much from our interns as they are learning from us.
Yeah.
So that's great. As we grow and mature in our careers, there's a mentorship aspect that just naturally happens. And I've always advised younger engineers in their career, you need two things. You need a mentor and you need a champion, right? That champion's the one that promotes you from internal standpoint. Yes. Someone help me, Rob needs that promotion. Rob should work on that project. This will be really good for Rob, and you'll see the benefits of working with me. I'm like, great. And then we have our mentors who are a little harder on us, and that's okay. That's kind of like that coach. I talked about Coach Larry when I was in college. They guide you, they mentor you, but they also tell you the things that you need to hear, but don't necessarily want to hear.
Yes.
And they make you better. So we all have, as professionals, we all have the responsibility to guide and mentor those coming up. That's great inside the firm. When you go back to the speed and the scale of what we're trying to build as an industry, we've seen alliances and partnerships between firms that you wouldn't have seen 10, 15 years ago.
100%.
Right. And that's okay. And we've learned as an industry to work together. There are programs where we'll provide just the MEP engineering or civil and structural, and other design firms that work for the client will do the architecture and other aspects. And we've been able to come together in the best interests of our clients. Leave the company badge at the door. You are part of that client team.
Yep.
And I think that collaboration is really the only way we're going to get things done. And as much as I would like to say we can, HR can do it all, and we can do a lot of things, we need to take a step back and understand what's the best value for our client. Where do we best fit and help them in their success? So
I think that was a beautiful answer, but now let's talk about how AI is impacting all of that.
Yeah.
How do you see the design on the design side? I mean, everyone is very concerned about their job being taken. They're concerned about, not only just the AI integration, but their job being taken. And some folks are even getting rid of people altogether and just trying to implement it before they understand it. Now, I think if you're smart, you'll pilot it, you'll kind of understand where it makes sense and where it doesn't. But from a design perspective, I'd love to understand, how are you all seeing that impacting the folks that you're bringing in, even from a hire? I mean, you probably have different people you didn't hire before 5 years ago that you're having to bring in now just because of AI, from an AI integration and expert perspective. And then how is that changing how you do design?
We're hiring different types of engineers and professionals. And I'll get to that in a second. Hitting on the concern about leveraging AI and jobs, I think we look at it from a standpoint of AI as a tool. Yeah. It's not a replacement strategy. So like any tool, if you use it properly, you can gain efficiencies. You can come up with better solutions. That doesn't mean, hey, I can do things faster, better, cheaper, and therefore I can lay off 20% of my workforce, because that doesn't really help anything. I think one of the other fears is that our design industry will be commoditized to the point where you just need a couple folks and you can press a button and AI will design a building and the systems and everything else. I do not see that happening. I see HDR leveraging AI as a tool to help us make better decisions that are informed by data.
Yes.
Don't bring an opinion to a data fight.
That's right.
Yeah, don't bring an opinion to the data fight. Make better decisions leveraging data that you can apply to your designs. And there are a number of different examples of that. When it comes to people and material movement inside our building, we can actually track things. When it comes to climate, sustainability, resiliency, and as I was doing my homework for this and studying for the exam, I reached through all the different services that HDR has, and there's just a vast amount, everything from our traditional AE services to economics and finance and climate research. And recently we, about 2 years ago, we hired a woman, Erin Little, in Kansas City. She was a meteorologist for a local TV station in Kansas City. And she's now our client science practice lead.
Oh, wow.
So she is looking at things from a data standpoint of how do we design better for resiliency, given the fact that we're seeing climate change happen firsthand. There's weather events, and I know that can be a touchy subject, but you look what happened recently here in Arizona. The storms that came through. There was massive flooding in the Miami and Globe area. When I'm not doing work, I'm fly fishing. What I've noticed in the springtime is that the snow melt in the mountains happens at a much faster rate. That water comes down, flows through the streams. You get some washouts, and that messes up my fishing. Not the primary concern for the planet, my fishing schedule, but you see these impacts. Droughts are longer. So how are we designing infrastructure in a response, and then try to minimize the impact that our infrastructure has on the environment? That's being done through data. That's being done through AI. When we get to a building design standpoint, we're using generative AI. We have a technology office that helps us develop programs that will look at data, optimize floor plans of data centers, IT cabinets, utilities, cooling aspects, CFD analysis. All that kind of comes in, and we can make better decisions earlier in the process.
Yeah.
So that's how we're using, and that program did not replace any of our architects or engineers. Our architects and engineers use that to then give our clients better options earlier in the process. How they maximize their footprint, their potential. What is the impact of using water-cooled chillers versus air-cooled chillers? How much water would that facility use? And then go back to our we have a GIS, or Geographical Information Services group, that can then do water mapping of aquifers underground. Is that amount of water even available?
Wow.
Right? We're using data to inform better decisions.
I love that. So I'm definitely hearing that it's an extension of a human, and if we get rid of the human, then we lose sight of when you have those hallucinations or those outliers that throw off your data. You need the experts who can recognize when you're being given a false sense of security.
Yeah.
and it's going to take an expert's eye to be able to see that. So you can't really get rid of it, not to mention there's other parts, like you said, with the sustainability. I mean, we've got to, from an ethical perspective, and we have to start designing smarter. A lot of our communities are pushing back on being able to build and how much energy we're using, how much water we're using.
Yeah.
And it's not just a tree hugger conversation. This is not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about real impact and people getting smarter about the resources we have, and so that we can be welcomed into these communities and really grow the infrastructure we need to grow for the future. And frankly, we're behind as it is. So we might as well embrace it.
So my grandfather on my mom's side was a civil engineer. His father was actually a structural engineer, and he was the first registered engineer in the state of Illinois. He's PE number 1, which is kind of a really cool historical fact. But So there's that lineage and legacy. But My grandfather, before he passed away, he bought me this book, To Engineer is Human. And it's written by Henry Petrosky, who's a civil engineer professor at Duke. And it talks about the human connection in engineering. And we can't do what we do without recognizing the impact on climate, land, people, the economic value that we as the AEC trades bring to regions and municipalities. So we have to take all those things into consideration when we're doing design. And you mentioned the pushback on data centers, and I can understand, right? You know, if you don't live in our industry and you don't understand what these facilities do, other than they use a lot of power, or you hear liquid cooling, and you say, "Man, we're pulling groundwater out." Right?
They're not thinking closed loop systems.
Yeah, and why would they? So we, as the AEC industry and the mission critical industry, need to maybe do a little better job of bringing out the idea of, hey, this is a utility now that we all use. It's part of our overall infrastructure.
That's right.
And there are firms like HDR, and there are a lot of other firms that do this well. We're trying to maximize the efficiency, both on the water side, the land side, the power side. You want firms with good cultures and good design principles designing these facilities that have a major impact on society and utilities and the environment.
And not only that, but that allows us to kind of get a little bit more welcomed into those communities. And not only that, but I also think it also goes back to the education and being able to share and articulate to those communities, like you said, why it's so important, why it's needed. We can't keep data center secret anymore.
Yeah.
I remember my first data center, I walked in and there was a big printout papers when we were still printing out the designs. It was all pretty in color and it was all printed out and hanging up in the trailer. And I remember asking if I could have a section of it. I wanted to frame it because it looked like art to me.
Right.
And the response was, nope, I have to shred that per my contract.
Yeah.
And then that's when I learned about the secrecy behind a data center. And you know, we give them code names, and half the time I don't even know who I built for, but I remember the code names half the time. And so now we're just starting to do that education and share and talk about it, because not only for that, but for the purpose of jobs, because we need someone to operate them. We need people to focus on them. We need people who are very, specifically getting, the education they need to drive the AI behind all of this, right? And not only that, we need to start educating trades and so forth about, hey, this is a cool job because we need people to build it. I mean, the reality of it is a crisis. Everybody's experiencing it. And like you said, if you don't have a really great culture, so you can hold on to those folks who feel like they've got a sense of ownership in what's happening, a sense of say in what's happening, then I think sometimes you lose the quality because they go someplace else. It's just trying to maintain that really healthy culture that maintains the people there and the consistency.
Yeah, it's the irony is people think of engineers as kind of this introvert, right? We're not always the most exciting people, but the truth of the matter is, anything that fails, whether it's a project, a company, or some kind of technology, it fails not because you didn't have smart people in the room. It fails because the smart people didn't talk and collaborate and coordinate to get a solution, right? So for engineers, even though it's very hard sometimes to speak up and talk, it is the most important thing we can do in our industry and for the general public at large. Help them understand what these facilities are, the reduction of energy use and water use, and how we're trying to do this. In my current role at HDR, I get the fun view of seeing both the chip manufacturing and the chip application.
Yes.
Right. So it's really cool. So I can see a little bit on the forefront of the R&D side for facilities and then the application. So I kind of know what I get a unique window in what's coming down the pipe there. R&D facilities that are leveraging AI are becoming more and more prominent. So you'll have whether it's biopharma, aerospace, the semiconductor industry itself, they're setting up R&D facilities to test this, and then they need a data center that's powered by AI kind of right next to it in proximity. And you want that proximity because you need that low latency for running the machine learning models, the different applications. So we're seeing more and more tech parks that are combined of, you have a data center utility component, followed by an R&D component, and those things are happening, right? And it's interesting because when a municipality first hears about it, they say, "Oh, it's a data center."
Right.
Time out. But it is, but that data center is a utility, a tool that's supporting business R&D, which creates jobs and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have just these small computer rooms that was just enough. That wasn't all we needed. That's all we needed inside businesses. But I'm afraid that if they don't start seeing it as a utility, we're going to start seeing the modern day ghost town happen, where companies leave because the local, communities and municipalities are not getting on board to support that. And so the companies leave because they can't get the support, and the people leave because the jobs aren't there anymore and they follow. And now you have your modern day ghost town, which follows the gold rush of all of this. I think it just like a picture kind of popped in my head for that. But I think it's a really great segue to start talking about how with the labor being a crisis, AI being an emerging thing that is not going away, how does HDR support professional growth and continuous learning and upskilling?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, AI is a tool, and it's a tool that as a society, we're all trying to mold and develop into something that benefits us and makes our jobs easier. With that, I think what happens is within our professional services groups of the traditional architecture and engineering platforms, as we're doing our daily tasks, we come back to our technology office and we say, "Hey, it would be really great if we had a tool that does this," right? Whatever it is. And our excellent team of AI programmers and technology experts, they look at that and say, "Challenge accepted." So we'll build internal tools, and then we'll beta test them. And does this give the results that we need? Like any other tool, you have to trust but verify.
Right.
Did the results hold up with what the predicted calculations done old school would be? And this is where the professional judgment comes in as architects and engineers. Whenever we get feedback from any program, I don't care if it's AI driven or just other software platforms, we still have the professional responsibility to use good judgment, standard of care, best practices within our industry to say, "Hey, does that make sense? Or is the output giving us something that just doesn't quite smell pass the sniff test?"
Right.
We walk that fine line of training with AI and making sure that the outputs of that are still within that industry standard of care, best practices. It's helped us become more efficient.
Sure.
In our designs, come up with ideas that are really neat and innovative. But then we have to walk it back and say, "Hey, does this make sense?"
100%. And not only that, we mentioned even previously about utilizing that data, and as long as it's in the right control measures, right? And you have a human that is still there that can verify the outputs of it. I mean, what a great tool to have if you're bringing that data in to create that continuous improvement, to help upskill folks who maybe aren't as familiar, and they can easily kind of sort through, have we dealt with this problem before? Yeah. Right? Or what was a solution or mitigation we came up for that problem, and maybe and who dealt with it so internally, so I can go maybe learn from them and understand the rest of the story. Being able to connect dots like that, I think, are really key right now when we're thinking about, upskilling the new folks who are coming in, utilizing AI and data. I think that's, and what you all are talking about from an automation perspective, hey, I've got this redundant task. So you combine that AI data stuff that you were talking before, combined with a redundant task, because frankly, there's not enough of me to go around. So if I have a redundant task that can just be automated, but I can, like you said, verify, then combine the two of those, and suddenly you're doing more with less. Suddenly you have more capacity, you have controls in place, you have quality in place, and you have a little bit more time to do a little bit more and still accomplish the things you need to accomplish. So it sounds like you've started kind of stirring this perfect formula of continuous improvement, and not only just internally, but then within your entire processes as well.
We're a big firm, 14,000 people. It takes a lot of professionals outside just the architecture and engineering department to make it run, make it happen. So accounting, legal, marketing, operations. So to your point, if we can take some of those daily tasks that are kind of mundane, or if we could look at financials, over the past few years and use that as a predictor for future results. And I know that's usually a catchphrase, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. You see that in all the financial commercials. But if we can take those tasks and very efficiently use them to help us run our business a little more efficiently, that's a great use of AI. And it doesn't take away jobs. No. It allows those jobs and those employees to do their job a little bit better and focus on the things that are important and have that good data in front of them so they can make business decisions as to where we want to go as a company and a firm.
I think you've touched on a couple of really important things. One was you keep mentioning all of these other departments, right? Outside of engineering. I mean, we can't forget about the fact that it takes a lot more than just a single engineer or a single contractor or single whatever to make this whole entire wheel churn. There's a huge group of cross-functional alignment that has to happen there. Yes. So sometimes that automation is just really allowing people to eliminate an email or a chat. Hey, where is this? When do you expect it? You can automatically see where ball in court is. And I mean, sometimes it's just eliminating some of those, tracking and communication things that kind of eat up some of your day. You do 10 or 12 of those a day, and you've lost a couple of hours of just trying to figure out what the status is on things. And so just having some of those tools in place, I can see that.
Bring people together, cross functions, different disciplines into the same room, communication.
Yep. Those are all really great things, I think, that helps kind of tie it all together. And we can't have, a lot of times the risks that happen within the entire process fall within the gaps between those departments, right? So you're kind of utilizing these tools to kind of bring everybody to the same forefront at the same time. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really important to us. We've made a concerted effort to really bridge those gaps for, I'll use your phrase, make sure that the engineers in one vertical market are talking to professionals in another vertical market. We have an immense amount of different unique professional staff, everything from, I mentioned the meteorologist, Aaron Little, that we brought on as our practice director for climate. We have economists. We have folks that can help us write grants for federal projects and funding. We have archaeologists, cultural archaeologists that will come in. So if there's a construction site that is, efforts going on and we dig up something that is a unique historical artifact, we can come in, evaluate it, look at it. What's the impact of continuing on with the construction? That's extremely important. Environmental aspects, the amount of environmental studies and work that we do, that again, we rely on data, public data that lives within the municipalities. Can we find an efficient way to bring that together, gather it, get the complete picture, and then give that to our civil engineers to help them in design? So it's collaboration. I think of anything I've learned over the almost 30 years that I've been in the industry, it is talk to people, reach out across the aisle, bring in folks with different ideas, different aspects. We have our engineering network groups, our ENGs, as we call them. We're groups of people with commonalities come together. It's an open platform to spur ideas. And once that happens, once you give some of that platform to collaborate and communicate, stand back and watch it happen. It is amazing. The output that we get from our young engineers working in cohort with our seasoned professionals within these network groups, and it just makes us stronger. And it gives everyone that safe space, and you can to give new ideas and bounce things off each other and say, well, what do you think of this? And I'm like, boy, 50% of that is fantastic. Not quite sure about the other half, but let's figure it out.
Right. I love that. I think that's really beautiful. Is there you mentioned half a dozen jobs I wasn't even expecting you to bring up, right? Yeah. That are part of the team. Is there one that a hire with a background that, that was maybe in the last few years that had a background that just completely unexpected that we're seeing now?
As we engage with our clients, I think there's a lot of potential that our clients in, say, healthcare, a nurse practitioner, do they come into our architecture group, our healthcare group, and do they give a different perspective
100%
on design, right? And planning of hospitals and what really happens in an OR, and how does our healthcare architecture team develop a more functional operating room or patient room that meets the needs of the patient, the doctor, the staff. So we're engaging a lot of folks. I've hired a number of folks from the semiconductor industry that worked for our clients at one point.
Mm-hmm.
They understand clean rooms. They understand the facilities aspect far better than someone who spent their career kind of just doing the designs, and they get to go on site every once in a while. They bring a unique perspective.
Yeah, I think
that's amazing.
Yeah, there's something powerful behind bringing in an end user perspective, whether it's implementing AI and a new software, a new technology, designing for a particular mission critical market. One, you're learning what's most important to them.
Yes.
And two, you're getting a perspective that is boots on the ground perspective, right? And there's just something very different that gets adopted at the end of that, right? So sometimes change is hard.
Yes, change is hard.
Change is hard because it's the parts in between that we don't understand. But to your point, when you start bringing in alternative ways of thinking, and anybody listening to this episode, if you're thinking about transferable skills, there's an opportunity to start thinking outside the box and go, where would my skills be? And maybe, just maybe, you can come and support a design team, improve the way they design for the end user who used to be you on the inside. And I think that's a really beautiful thing as we think about the future, the AI, and how all of this is just really making us think outside the box and differently on how we hire. I
learned something a few weeks ago. We have marine biologists within HDR that help, study the impacts of climate on fish and marine wildlife. Who would have thought that a engineering firm based out of Omaha, Nebraska, right, that traditionally does your power, your water, your facility engineer, that we have marine biologists working for us? How cool is that?
That is very cool. It is really cool. And she's going to get tagged in this episode. So I might have to have her on just because I'm already excited to learn more about her myself. So we have to have her on another episode, but we're definitely going to tag her in this episode because I know everybody's going to be very interested to learn a little bit more about her background. And I mean, you used her so many great examples, and I love this. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, any last thoughts you'd like to add?
We are in a very exciting time, right? And it's I say that from the standpoint of technology, speed, growth. That also gets to be a little bit nervous and scary. I know a lot of my friends across the industry, when we meet up for coffee or happy hour, the first thing that comes out of everyone's mind is, I've never seen the industry so busy and so fast paced. We've been saying that for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
And go back to what my grandfather, the words of wisdom, he told me at one point, there's no need to evolve. Survival isn't mandatory. I thought about it for a second, like, well, that's a bit grim. The lesson there was the way we did things a few years ago, whether it's 3, 5, 10, 50, back to 108 years ago when HDR was formed. There will be common elements and culture that will always be part of our firm and our practice. But we as design professionals within HDR, outside HDR, we as design professionals need to keep up with how we can do things more efficiently, better. That's not only for our clients, that's also for ourselves, quality of life.
Yes.
Right. I want to make sure that as hard as I work, and as hard as my team works, I want to make sure that they're not putting in 80 hours a week. They can go home and spend time with their families. They can go out and enjoy the things that they want to do. So it's one thing to just sit there and just crank out design and do things faster and better, which then typically means you get to do more of it and you're putting in more work. No, how do we do things in a way that supports not only our business, but supports our employees in a quality of life and they get to enjoy it? That's really where I would say we're going. We need to think about the whole picture.
Yes. And you just made a comment about, making sure there's some work-life balance there for your teams. And that just goes back to just, again, what we highlighted at the very beginning, the culture within. We don't live to work. We work to live at the end of the day. And if you're burnt out and you're working so many hours, then your quality and your output start to go down. So you do have to create that balance. And how can we do that? You all are getting very creative inside on how to automate, how do you leverage AI as an extension of yourself, how to hire differently to improve the output that you're putting out. And so thank you so much for, being on this episode of Hands-On Heroes, where we focus on this labor crisis and the workforce needs of today. And we're really even more so focused on planting the seeds of tomorrow by putting books and STEM kits in children's hands and educating about mission critical jobs and trades, which we desperately need. So thank you so much for being on here. I do have to give a shout out to our title sponsor, Mod 42, and thank you, HDR, for powering this episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Hands-On Heroes. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to get notified every Thursday that a new video has been posted. And while we're here, check out another episode. Also, if you're interested in joining the mission, either as a guest speaker or sponsor, visit handsonheroes.net for more information or reach out to us directly at info@handsonheroes.net.